You ever walk into a room and immediately know you don't belong? That was me, the second I stepped into that biotech launch party. My name's Gavin Rhodes. I'm 41 years old, a wilderness rescue pilot based in Missoula, Montana. I'm used to altitude sickness, frostbite, and downed helicopters. But this was a different kind of terrain. I tugged at the collar of the borrowed blazer, already sweating under the hotel lights. The air smelled like champagne and ambition. I spotted Isla across the room before she saw me. My wife. Or at least, the person I'd once called that with confidence. She stood by a giant circular VR display that looped something about cognitive enhancement and synthetic neural bonding. She was nodding along with a tall man in a cream linen suit. Every so often, she'd laugh, not her usual laugh either. This one was breathy and soft, the kind you save for people who matter. I wandered closer. Nobody looked my way, except for a girl at the check-in table who asked if I was +1 or media. I said, husband, and she blinked like that was the wrong answer. Gavin. Isla finally saw me. Her tone was upbeat, but her eyes darted around like she'd been caught slacking. You made it. I said I would, I replied. She brushed a hand down my arm, barely touching me. Come meet Dorian. That's when I realized who the guy in linen was. Dorian extended a hand. You must be the pilot, he said with a polished grin. Isla's told me all about you. Funny. I hadn't heard a word about him until 2 weeks ago. Only the good stuff, I hope, I muttered, shaking his hand. Oh, all good, he said, then turned back to Isla without missing a beat. I watched her face change in real time. Her posture straightened, her eyes lit up. She leaned in when he spoke, laughed too loud at his corny jokes. I stood there, invisible, sipping something bubbly that tasted like metal. Later, when the music picked up, she took Dorian's hand and led him toward the makeshift dance floor. At first, I thought she was just being polite, networking. But the way they moved together told a different story. Their bodies weren't touching, not exactly, but they might as well have been. She tilted her chin up when she laughed at something he said, and when he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, she didn't flinch. Didn't even look around to see if I was watching. I stood there, a stranger in dress shoes that pinched, watching my wife become someone I didn't recognize. When I couldn't take it anymore, I left my half-full glass on the bar and walked out. Outside, the air was cold and mercifully silent. I sat in the car, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. When the passenger door opened, Isla slid in, her face flushed. What the hell, Gavin? She snapped, slamming the door. You just left. I didn't look at her. Didn't want to interrupt your dance. Her jaw tightened. It was a professional event. Looked pretty personal from where I was standing. Oh my God, she groaned, tossing her head back. Are you really doing this now? I finally turned. You didn't want me there. You wanted a prop. She stared at me, stunned. What are you talking about? You wanted the devoted husband. The wilderness pilot who flies choppers into danger but sits quietly while you shine. But God forbid I exist outside your curated little narrative. That's not fair. No, I said, cutting her off. What's not fair is dragging me into your reinvention tour and pretending I matter. We sat in silence, the engine off, the city noise muffled behind the glass. I looked down at my hands, rough, nicked from years of work. Hers sat in her lap, pale and pristine, like they'd never held anything that hurt. And just like that, something inside me shifted. She turned to face me, but the warmth had drained from her expression. You're being paranoid. No, I said, staring at the windshield. I'm being observant. Isla scoffed. It was a biotech launch, Gavin. People danced. That's what happens at these events. You don't even know Dorian. I glanced over at her. Do you? That got her. She looked away, fingers tightening in her lap. A pause stretched between us, thick and loaded. I didn't want to bring you tonight, she said finally. But I knew you'd be hurt if I didn't. So I did. My stomach turned. Glad I could be part of the furniture. She whipped her head around. Oh, come on. You want to talk about appearances? You showed up in a jacket that doesn't fit, with a face like you'd rather be flying through a thunderstorm. Because I would, I said flatly. Because at least that kind of storm makes sense. Isla's breath caught, but she recovered quick. So now I'm the bad guy for having a life that isn't about helicopters and mountain rescues? I looked at her, really looked. You're not the bad guy for having a life. You're the bad guy for making me feel like I don't belong in it. A flicker of guilt crossed her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. You're twisting this. I laughed, bitter and short. I twisted nothing. You danced with that man like I didn't exist. You smiled at him in a way I haven't seen in years. It was a dance, she snapped. No, I said, voice low. It was a preview. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might say something real, something that mattered. But instead, she reached for the door handle. Let's just go home, she muttered. We're both tired. I didn't move. How long have you been rewriting this story? What are you even talking about? I stared at her. You're crafting some new life, Isla. Some polished, edited version of yourself. And I'm not part of it. I'm the old chapter. The outdated reference. She flinched, but didn't argue. I nodded, more to myself than to her. You didn't want a partner tonight. You wanted a prop. That did it. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she stared straight ahead. You know what? Maybe I did. Neither of us spoke after that. The drive home was quiet, except for the low hum of the tires on pavement. And in that silence, I knew something important had cracked, not just between us, but inside me. It was 4:13 a.m. when I padded into the kitchen and saw it sitting there. Isla's tablet. Left open, screen glowing faintly like it was waiting for me. I stood there, barefoot on the cold tile, staring at the device like it might explode. I didn't touch it at first. I just looked. I'm not a snooper. Never have been. But that night was different. Something in me had already snapped, and now it was stretching, unraveling. I tapped the screen. The last open window wasn't even locked. Just a folder named Neurosim Trial, Private Logs. At first, I thought it was work stuff, graphs, data, maybe a few academic notes. But then I opened one of the voice memos. Isla's voice played softly through the speaker, light and warm in a way I hadn't heard in years. Morning log. Dorian, last night was electric. The way our thoughts synced, it's like we already know what the other is going to say. You make me believe in the power of this work. Of us. There was a pause, then her laugh, low and breathy. I wore Gavin's old jacket to the launch. You said it gave me the grounded look. He has no idea. But you were right. It made everything feel more authentic. Like I wasn't just another ambitious woman chasing prestige. My stomach clenched. I opened another. Don't worry about him coming tonight. He won't make a fuss. Gavin's good at fading into the background. That's part of his charm, remember? There were photos too. A series of snapshots, Isla and Dorian in hotel lounges, in lab offices, in restaurants I didn't recognize. She always looked different in those pictures. Taller somehow. Sharper. Like someone who'd already erased the parts of herself she didn't want. I didn't realize Isla was standing behind me until I heard the floor creak. You went through my stuff? Her voice was flat, unreadable. I turned, tablet still in my hands. How long? She didn't answer. Just crossed her arms, eyes icy. How long, Isla? She sighed like it was some tedious chore. Since Barcelona. Barcelona. That was 8 months ago. A research trial she said went longer than expected. She came home tanned, rested, and weirdly affectionate for exactly 2 days. So what, Dorian's your partner now? In research? In bed? In everything? Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Don't make this dramatic. Dramatic. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You used me as a decoy, a placeholder. You dressed me up and dragged me into your new world so you could seem grounded, while you and your lab messiah played out whatever this is. It's not like that, she said. It's exactly like that. Silence settled again. Heavy. Unfixable. You could have told me, I said quietly. Hell, you could have just let me go. Isla stepped forward, took the tablet from my hand, and powered it off. Go back to bed, Gavin. But I didn't. I stood there, hands shaking, staring at the spot where the screen had glowed. That was the night I stopped being confused. I wasn't misreading things. I wasn't insecure or out of place. I'd been removed from the story. Isla just forgot to tell me. The next morning, she made French toast. Cinnamon dusted, crust crisp just the way I liked. She even warmed the syrup. Our wedding playlist was playing quietly from her phone on the counter, like we were some happy, quirky couple in a Sunday morning movie. It was insulting. I sat at the table, hands folded, watching her slice bananas like nothing had happened. She hummed to the music like she didn't spend the night standing over a husband holding proof of her emotional affair, or worse. Here, she said, placing the plate in front of me. I figured we could have a reset. A reset, I repeated. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too calm. Isla sat down across from me, sipping coffee like she wasn't avoiding my eyes. Things got intense last night. We both said things. I think maybe we need to decompress. I looked at the food. Then at her. You think French toast fixes this? She frowned. I'm trying to meet you halfway. I almost laughed. Halfway? You're halfway into a new life, Isla. I'm barely in the frame. She set her coffee down, a little too hard. Don't act like I haven't tried. You've been checked out for years. I was trying to give you space, I said. I thought you needed room to grow. I didn't realize that meant growing away from me. She flinched, but not enough. You've always been a little quiet, Gavin. Closed off. You're not exactly easy to connect with. And that gave you permission to erase me? Isla shook her head, rubbing her temple. You're twisting this. No, I said, you are. Every version of this marriage that exists in your head has me playing the supporting role. She pushed the plate toward me again. Can we please just eat and talk like adults? I picked up the fork. Then I set it down. You know what hurts the most? I said, voice soft. You didn't even think I'd care. You really believed I was too simple to feel any of this. Isla opened her mouth. I raised a hand. Don't insult me by pretending you miscalculated. She leaned back in her chair, eyes shiny but dry. I didn't think you'd react like this. You've never been emotional. Maybe I've been hiding it too well. She looked down, tracing the rim of her mug. We could try therapy. I exhaled, long and tired. We're past rescue. Isla looked up sharply. Don't say that. We're not in love, I said. We're just scared of rebuilding alone. Neither of us spoke for a long while after that. The toast sat there, going cold. The music played on, cheerful and hollow. That morning, something died between us, not with rage or slamming doors. Just a quiet admission. We were finished. We just hadn't drawn the boundary yet. I started small. An old shoebox from the closet. A folder from the filing cabinet under the stairs. A thumb drive I hadn't used in years. I wasn't planning revenge. This wasn't about drama. It was about clarity. You can't fight fog without a map. First, I pulled up her business travel logs, the ones she'd emailed me to reassure me she was just focused. The Barcelona trip was listed as 7 days. The hotel receipt I found in her suitcase when she got back said 10. Then there were the spa charges, luxury places in Napa and Sedona. One billed as research recovery, another as strategic wellness. And both booked under a card linked to our shared account. I remembered asking her about them. She waved it off, said it was a comp from the biotech firm. She lied, and I'd let it slide. But the most damning was buried in a folder named Grant Review Drafts. In it were emails between her and Dorian about financial independence scenarios. It sounded professional, until one email had the subject line, Seed Fund Transfer Complete. Title, Research Retention. The amount? $58,000. From our joint account. Disguised. Quiet. Gone. I felt the blood drain from my face. That evening, I drove across town to a small office tucked behind a coffee shop. No sign on the door, no glossy brochure, just a bronze plaque that read, Marta Kleiner, attorney, intellectual and quiet exits. Inside, Marta looked like someone who'd seen it all and forgot none of it. Gray sweater, blunt haircut, no nonsense. You're a wilderness pilot, she said after I told her my story. Rescue mostly. She leaned back in her chair. You planning on rescuing this marriage? No, I said. I'm planning on landing safely. Without burning down the mountain. Marta gave a small smile. Smart. I laid the folder on her desk. She flipped through the pages without changing expression. Voice memos. Transfer screenshots. Photos. The works. After a minute, she said, You want dignity or destruction? Freedom, I replied. And for my daughter to know I didn't sleep through the lie. That was the only time Marta looked surprised. You've got a daughter? Hazel. She's 20. Med student. She thinks we're solid. She's going to have questions. I nodded. And I'll answer every one. When she's ready. Marta tapped the folder. You've already done half my job. Most people come in with bruises. You brought evidence. I stood to leave. Then let's finish the other half. She handed me a small envelope. Start here. Separate bank account. Clean slate. First step's usually the hardest. Driving home, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't scared of what came next. Hazel showed up on a Wednesday afternoon, unannounced, suitcase in hand and hair pulled into a messy bun. She hugged me like nothing in the world was wrong. Surprise break, she said. Clinical rotation got delayed. Figured I'd come home, steal some real food, sleep in my old bed. I forced a smile. We kept your room exactly the same. Even the awful purple curtains. She grinned. Those curtains are iconic. Behind her, Isla stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrows slightly raised like she was waiting for a cue. I gave her none. For the next few days, we played house. Hazel cooked breakfast one morning, over-salted eggs and burnt toast, but she was proud. Isla laughed at her own clumsy pancake flips. They looked like a mother-daughter duo in a TV commercial. I stood back and watched, hands in my pockets, waiting for it to feel real again. It didn't. That night, after Hazel went to bed, Isla cornered me in the hallway. "Don't," I said before she could speak. "We're not doing this while she's here." "She's not stupid, Gavin." "No," I agreed. "She's not. But she still believes in us. And I won't take that from her. Not yet." Isla exhaled through her nose. "So what? You're just going to pretend everything's fine for a week?" "I've been pretending for years," I muttered. "A few more days won't kill me." But it did wear me down. Every laugh at dinner felt like nails under my skin. Every time Hazel curled up next to Isla on the couch, I wondered how much she'd inherited from each of us and what she'd think when she knew the full truth. On Saturday night, we sat on the back porch. Hazel and Isla shared a blanket, sipping tea and talking about dermatology rotations and sleep-deprived professors. I sat in the corner, mostly silent, letting the wind do the talking. Hazel looked at me suddenly. "Dad?" I turned. "Yeah. You okay? You seem—" "I don't know. Not here." I hesitated, then smiled. "Just tired, kiddo. You know, grown-up stuff. Bills. Roofs. Pilot insurance." She gave a sleepy chuckle. "Still dramatic about your paperwork, huh?" "Always," I said. Later, after she went to bed, I found Isla in the kitchen, wiping down a spotless counter like it was a compulsion. "Don't do it," she said without turning around. "Not while she's here." I leaned on the doorway. "The papers are signed." Her hand stopped moving. "Gavin, please." "No." She turned to face me. "Just wait. 2 more days. Please. Don't drop this on her now. Let her leave with one good memory of this house." I looked past her at the photos still hanging on the fridge. Us in Yellowstone. Hazel's science fair ribbon. A magnet shaped like a helicopter. "You had your chance to protect good memories," I said. "Now I'm protecting her future." She opened her mouth, then shut it. I walked away. Back upstairs, I peeked into Hazel's room. She was asleep, limbs tangled in a mess of blankets, her old teddy bear under one arm. She hadn't brought it in years. I guess even future doctors regress sometimes. I closed the door gently and went to bed knowing it was almost time. Hazel's last morning home was quiet. She was flying back to Seattle that afternoon. Her duffel bag sat by the front door, her med school hoodie folded neatly on top. I watched her eat a banana while scrolling through her phone, legs curled under her on the couch like she was still 10 years old. Isla moved around the kitchen like a woman hosting brunch, offering toast, reheating coffee. Acting like a week of pretending could hold a marriage together. I waited until Hazel went upstairs to grab her charger. Then I placed the envelope on the kitchen island. Isla saw it before I said a word. Her hands froze mid-pour, and the coffee sloshed over the rim of the mug. "What is that?" she asked. "You know what it is." Her face dropped the performance. No tight smile. No faux concern. "You're actually doing this?" I nodded. "The paperwork's all there. I've already filed." "Gavin." "I'm not arguing," I said. "Not this time." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "You're going to destroy everything." "She still believes in us." "She believes in what we let her see," I replied. "That's not the same thing." Isla reached for the envelope, but stopped short. Her fingers hovered just above it like it was hot to the touch. "She'll ask questions," she said. "And when she does," I said, "I won't lie." A beat of silence. "You're abandoning me," she whispered, like it was some kind of betrayal. "No," I said quietly. "You abandoned me a long time ago." I just finally stopped standing still. From upstairs came Hazel's voice, muffled and sweet. "Hey, did someone move my charger?" I turned away from the island, heading toward the staircase. "I'll help her find it," I said. Isla didn't move. By the time we reached the airport later that afternoon, the mood had shifted back into something lighter. Hazel talked about her next class rotation, about maybe applying for residencies closer to home. She hugged Isla tightly, then turned to me. "You gonna be okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" She smiled. "I've got exams. You've got paperwork." I almost laughed. When she disappeared past the security gate, Isla and I stood side by side for a moment, watching the crowd swell and scatter. "You didn't have to do it today," she said, not looking at me. I did, I said, because pretending was starting to feel like lying. Then I walked away. No big scene. No final insult. Just a man choosing peace over pretense. The first thing I did after Islam moved out was paint the guest room. Not because it needed it, but because I needed it. That sage green she'd picked years ago was cold, clinical, like something from one of her brochures. I covered it in a warm, muddy orange that didn't match anything else in the house, but made the room feel like mine. I threw out the brittle succulents she always forgot to water and filled the shelf with paperbacks I hadn't touched in years. Every weekend after that, I did something small. New bedding, new kitchen towels, rearranged the living room furniture so the sun hit the armchair just right in the morning. Took down the gallery wall of our carefully staged couple photos and replaced them with old trail maps and a framed sketch Hazel made in middle school, a lopsided helicopter, and a stick figure labeled Dad with enormous boots. The silence in the house shifted. At first, it echoed. Now, it breathed. I started waking up early again. Not for work. For me. I'd take the truck and head out to the edge of the Bitterroot Range before sunrise. Park by the cliffs. Unroll my thermos. Sit there in the cold with a sandwich into view, like I used to before life got heavy. Some mornings, I joined the local volunteer rescue crew on training runs. They didn't need me. I wasn't even technically on call anymore, but nobody questioned it. A few of the rookies even asked for tips on fog navigation and wind shifts. I kept my answers short. That was the thing about flying. You never over-explain. You just know when it's time to pull up. One Saturday, Hazel came to visit. She brought cookies and a stack of medical textbooks, and when she saw the living room, she paused. It feels different in here, she said, quietly. Different bad or different good? She smiled. Just different. Like you're finally breathing in your own house. We sat on the couch, sharing coffee, watching her scroll through photos of school events and lab models. Eventually, she looked at me and said, I knew. I blinked. Knew what? That you and Mom were over. Even before you admitted it. I swallowed. Why didn't you say anything? She shrugged. I think I didn't want it to be true. But I always knew. You looked like a ghost for years. I didn't reply. I couldn't. She reached over and took my hand, the same way she had when she was little and scared of storms. You're better now, she said. I can tell. And I broke. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a slow leak of everything I'd held in, grief, guilt, relief, while my daughter sat beside me and let me be human. For the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a father. I met Elise 3 months after the divorce was finalized. She wasn't dramatic about it. She didn't even know. To her, I was just Gavin, the guy who brings good coffee and double-checks wind reports. We were both volunteers in the aerial mapping program that scanned for early wildfire zones. She ran drones. I logged data and watched the skies like they still belonged to me. Elise was quiet. Focused. She wore her hair in a messy braid and always brought dried mango slices in a tin lunchbox she claimed was retro, though it looked like something from a thrift store in Butte. She spoke in facts, not filler. We didn't talk much at first. Mostly just trail conditions and drone battery life. Then, one morning, the wind changed suddenly mid-flight. I saw it coming and called it early. She adjusted instantly. Afterward, back at the truck, she handed me a water bottle and said, You've done this before. Search and rescue pilot, I replied. She nodded. You fly like someone who doesn't like surprises. I smiled. I've had enough of those. We started chatting more during breaks. Always light. Always neutral. Books we'd both abandoned halfway through. Her theory that fire lookout towers are just introvert treehouses. My childhood fear of open water. Her tendency to cry over music but never movies. It wasn't flotation. It wasn't anything big. But it was clean. One morning, after a longer-than-usual mapping run, we stood on a ridge watching the fog burn off. She looked at me and said, You seem lighter lately. I didn't answer right away. Just let the wind hit my face. Let the air move through me like it hadn't in years. Then I said, I stopped pretending to be part of a story that already ended. She didn't ask for details. She just nodded. I'm glad, she said. You wear peace better than armor. We didn't hug. We didn't linger. We packed up the drone gear and headed back to the base station. But in the quiet shuffle of cables and cases, something settled in me. This wasn't a new chapter. It was a blank page. And this time, I wasn't writing to impress anyone. I sat in a clearing on the edge of a bluff just south of Glacier National Park, thermos in hand. The last of the sunrise still brushing the tips of the trees in pale gold. It had become a new ritual, no schedule, no phone calls. Just me, a beat-up trail chair, and the kind of silence that didn't feel lonely anymore. I looked up. The sky was impossibly clear. No storms on the horizon. No turbulence in my chest. Just space, open and honest. There'd been a time, not long ago, when silence meant tension, when it filled every room like smoke from something burning under the surface. But this was different. This silence was clean. Still. A kind of freedom I didn't even know I'd been craving until I had it. My phone buzzed once. No ring-on. No urgency. A message from Elise. Trail run up near Flathead this Saturday. You in? I stared at it for a moment. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I realized how long it had been since someone invited me into something just for the sake of it. No angle. No performance. No pressure to wear a role I'd long since outgrown. I typed back. Absolutely. That was it. No explanation. No long speech. Just one word that finally meant what it should. I sipped my tea. Let the wind graze my face. Let my mind wander without crashing into anything painful. For so long, I lived like a man on standby, waiting to be needed, to be chosen, to be visible. Now I lived like someone who'd finally landed. Not perfectly. Not pain-free. But fully. And that was enough.